All right, about 30 more seconds. We still have a few people that need to join.
How many is one? This one.
All right, let's get started. So we're just going to ask a couple questions to get started. So the first thing I want to see is just what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think of the word grades? And if you're not in Kahoot, you can feel free to put it into the chat.
Dr. Arvilla, can you repeat the question?
Yes, thank you. So the question is just what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word grades or when you think about grades? So it can be anything you think about, just what's the first thing that pops into your head? All right. So stress is the biggest one that everybody puts in there. I see stress, anxiety, pass, fail, unfair, pain, achievements, success, evaluation, failing. So we're going to kind of come back and talk about grades in a minute because this class approaches grades a little differently than you might have done it before. I know some of you have taken one of my classes, so you're used to this. But we're going to kind of come back to this question in a minute and talk about why essentially all of these are pretty negative. Everybody's talking about stress and anxiety and all of that. First, let's see, what do you hope to learn this semester? So either in my class or a general skill or anything you want to learn this semester. So it can be specific to class, it doesn't have to be. Let's see if we can show these answers. All right. So better study skills, we'll definitely be going over that in this class. We're lucky in this class to talk about things that are dealing with cognition. And cognition is essentially how we think, how our brain is processing all of the information around us. This leads us to talking about things like memory, processing, perception, and all of those things are wrapped around study skills. So we are definitely going to go over study skills, memory. We will actually talk about stress and how to minimize stress, but really kind of how stress affects the brain and your cognitive abilities. Spoiler alert, chronic stress like we've been under for the past 2 years decreases our cognitive abilities. So how many of you have felt that you're not as good at studying or processing or thinking in the last 2 years as you were prior to? I should see a lot of me's coming out. Me too. This is normal. This is actually a stress response. And we're going to talk about that later in the semester. So we'll talk all about that. Help with grad school. We'll do a little bit of advising in this class. Again, advising is open for those. Study for exams, how to make class more enjoyable. We'll work on that. Diving more into the field of psychology, definitely understanding time management. We'll talk a little bit about time management. There's even a few assignments in this class that are built to help with time management. I started the first assignment, for those of you who have looked at it, is about goal planning. And about 90% of students always say they want to work on time management. So I started to build it into the course. So we'll talk about that. Cognition, obviously, we're going to talk all about that. So awesome. You guys are wanting to learn some really cool things. So let's dive a little bit into the class before there's one more question, but we'll get to that a little later. Let's dive into what's important for the class. And really what we're going to be looking at is what's important. What do you need to do? How do you need to do it? Feel free, again, to ask questions anytime, either in the chat or over the microphone. Can everybody see kind of the class Canvas page on here? I just want to make sure. Perfect. Okay. So this is the homepage. I put in a little bit about some ways to be successful in this course, what's due, things like that. Just a short infographic if you're ever wondering. We'll talk about, again, time management, how to study. We're going to expand on these concepts throughout the class. If you have questions, you can email me at any point in time. I have a coffee hour every Tuesday. So I'll be in Starbucks every Tuesday from 9 to 10 a.m. I'll actually probably be there a little earlier too if you want to come in there. I usually get there at about 8. But definitely from 9 to 10 if you just want to come and get coffee to ask your questions or talk, whatever. You can come to my office again anytime. Tuesday through Thursday, I should be in my office most of the time. And you can stop by any point in time, or there's links on this infographic, but also in the Canvas modules, as well as the syllabus, to schedule an appointment if you want to schedule an appointment specifically. You can always ask me questions before, after class, things like that. And then what type of class work, we're going to go over that in a second. There's also some course links if you need the course calendar, course syllabus, or campus resources anytime. Those are all on that front page. A little note about announcements. You've probably noticed now, because we had to totally pivot this first week. Thank you for being open to pivoting. I communicate through course announcements. So make sure that you get those, whether or not you check them like once per day or you get the notification. Either way, just check them constantly. That's where I will update you if anything is changing, like a canceled class or anything like that. Again, you noticed that kind of from this first week when we had to cancel the first day of class. All communication will kind of come through those announcements. So make sure that you have access to those. If you have any problems with those, email me, email the course TA. We're going to talk about TAs in just a second, but let us know. Modules are where you're going to find all the information. So we have the Start Here module. I know a few of you have already gone through that. This has all the information, the syllabus, the course calendar. There's one to meet your instructors. So a little bit about me. Some links to how to contact me if you want to. Again, the link for creating a meeting, and as well as your TAs. So we have a graduate TA, Jenna Pablo. She's here right now. She is our graduate student. Hi. So she is the one that is helping me with giving feedback on all of your assignments, anything like that. She's really well experienced because she is a graduate student. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to email her. We also have undergraduate TAs. We have 4 of them. So Kalina, Andrea, Lila, and Rebecca. they're here to help you during class. Some of them are going to be in class. They're here to help you if you need Zoom, if you have any questions, if you need help when we're doing activities, anything like that. So all of their information is on this site. There's also what to do if life happens. So we've noticed in the last 2 years that life kind of sucks and things happen, like this week when I got COVID for the very first time in 2.5 years on the first week of school. So because of that, I understand life happens for you as well. There's a lot of stuff going on. So this first form is if you need an extension for any reason. We're going to talk, my late policy is actually pretty lenient. So with my late policy, you actually have 24 hours after a deadline to turn something in. Essentially, I started this because students will email me at midnight saying their computer doesn't work. I'm not up at midnight. I don't want to triage those. So if you need the next day, or a lot of times what I get is students have to work at that time, or they had something else going on. It really doesn't matter. So you automatically have 24 hours. So everything typically is due Sundays at midnight. That means you really have to like Monday at midnight to turn them in. If you need longer than that Monday, that's where you fill out this form. It's just going to ask you to, again, engage in time management. When do you think you're going to get it done? That type of thing. So if you need an extension for any reason, I don't ask the reason. It doesn't matter. You don't need to have a legitimate reason for missing class, for extensions. You just have to kind of ask them so that I know what's happening and I make sure that that's reflected in how I give you feedback and approach. The other one is if you need a Zoom link for that day. So if you happen to catch COVID, or if you're sick, or if you need to stay home, or whatever, again, I don't ask the reason, you just fill it out and our TAs will send you a Zoom link and monitor the Zoom when we're in class. So those are what to do if life happens. Again, you'll have access to the syllabus, the course calendar, all of that stuff in that Start Here module. It'll stay up here so that you have access to all of this whenever you want. And then from there, you'll go on to what's due for each of the weeks. So the readings, right now you have an individual learning plan that's due. All of that will be due in these weekly modules. All right, do I have any questions so far? I'm talking a lot, so I want to make sure we get through all questions. Okay, again, ask your questions if you do have them. So one thing I did want to go over, and I'm going to pull the syllabus up so we can go through the syllabus this way, but Perusal. Has anybody used Perusal before? Has anybody heard of it? I know a couple of students have taken my class before, but some of you may not have. So there's a couple. So Perusal is a software where you're going to do all of your readings. And this is where all the readings are located in here. All the readings are free. They're accessible to you. They're also available in the course module right here with PDFs. The PDFs are not super accessible. So if you need to download the PDFs and you need anything that's more accessible for like screen readers or read aloud function or anything like that, just let me know and we'll work to get it for you for free. It is available through the library. So it's also in course reserves. There should be a copy of all the readings in the library as well if you want like the physical hard book. Anything like that, just let me know. But Perusal has it. Perusal has a read aloud function. I've heard the voice is not the best, but it does have it. If you need it. I noticed that a lot of you have already done some of the readings. Essentially what you'll do is open the reading and it'll bring the reading up. So this is our course syllabus. And then what you'll do is you'll just highlight. And when you highlight, you can annotate. So you can ask a question, you can make a statement, anything like that. So that's what you're going to be doing in the reading. Some of you have already started the readings and you've been doing excellent. I'll upvote, which means I kind of put a little check mark on and you can see if I like the comment. I do get students this first week kind of scared about what constitutes good annotations. Really just anything that's engaging, interacting normally. So, and I have a question in the chat. I'm going to get to that in just a second because that's an excellent question. But just engaging in it normally. What I get a lot from students is oh, I heard about, like, I heard this in my other class that I took, and this is what I learned about that in that class. I love those types of comments. Just kind of interact as organically as you can. After this first week's reading, what I will do is anybody who's at risk of not getting points for the reading will get a direct email from me and from Jenna, where we will go over exactly what you need to improve for the next reading. Following the first week, I have like 0 problems. Usually students do this really well until about week 9, when you really just drop off because you're tired and stressed, and then you decide not to do it. But you all do really, really well, so I wouldn't worry too much. But here's our syllabus. I'll take these conversations off so you can't see what other people are writing quite right now. There's some work-related skills on the syllabus. These are things you can directly put onto your CV or your resume when you're done. These are things that you'll learn from this course that can directly be put into documents that you'll be using to get jobs. I'm going to come back actually to the chat question really quick. Somebody asked if it's okay to use Audible. Yes. So both of these books are available on Audible. I have listened to both on Audible. The other thing is, not both of them, but Make It Stick is available on Libby. I don't know if anybody has not heard of Libby before, but Libby is like the audiobook app or audiobook and digital books from the library. So if you have a library card, either through Washoe County or wherever you're from, I've also heard that like big libraries like New York and Chicago allow you to access their library, which is more extensive, for about $50 a year. But if you go to ours, you can go to like Washoe County Library for free. And you'll have to rent them out, so you'll have to wait till they're available. But they have audiobooks and digital books. And I know they have Make It Stick on audiobook at Libby, which is free. But if you already have the Audible account, both of these are on there. You're more than welcome to use Audible. You'll have to kind of come back through perusal to make your annotations. But it's not too difficult because you'll know exactly kind of where you are, and you can kind of come back and just find it. But I definitely recommend audiobooks. That's how I consume most of my audio, because I have 2 small children, a full-time job, and I'm very busy. So I usually listen as I'm walking to and from class, or going on a hike, or taking my dog for a walk, things like that. So yes, you can absolutely use Audible, all of that. But again, all the source is available for free here if you don't want to purchase it. All right, so on the syllabus, this is all just contact stuff, same that we already went over in the modules. The course materials, again, they're all for free on perusal. If you want them, you can access them through our library, or if you want to purchase them, you're more than welcome to, but you don't have to. Sorry. The next page is just our class values. People don't usually talk about things of what I value, what I want from you. I really want you to be curious. I want you to learn. This is going to bring us into kind of our conversation on grades. But I care a little bit more about actual learning than about your performance and your obedience, if you will. I'll spare too much on my soapbox on this topic. So we'll come back to my grading policy in just a second. What you're going to be doing is the course readings. You will have to engage with perusal every week to do the course readings. Again, you have a little bit of time on that late policy to do them by Monday, but the readings are available on perusal. You'll just go through, annotate through those. We'll have exit tickets. These are ways, so in cognitive psychology, we'll have a lecture on this later. But one of the best ways to remember things is to constantly practice it. So essentially, you need to pull the information out of your brain as many times as possible in order to remember long-term. And one of the ways we do this, we call it retrieval practice. You'll learn a lot about this in one of the books as well as the lectures. But exit tickets are going to be retrieval practice. So we're going to have you essentially working through cognitive concepts and pulling them out of your brain kind of each week. That's kind of the goal of exit tickets. These will be at the end of each class period. You'll turn them in. You don't have to have one for every single class period. I don't have an attendance policy, especially right now with everything going on in the world. I don't think that we need to have everybody in person all the time. As we can see, we couldn't be in person for this first week. So you can miss a good amount of these exit tickets and still come out with an A in the course. So I wouldn't worry too much if you have to skip a day or things like that. You need about, we'll show you a little bit later, it's in the syllabus, you need about 80% of the coursework, 90% of the coursework to get that A. You can skip some of these exit tickets. So don't worry if you have to miss class. You don't have to email me and be like, where is it? How can I access it? You just skip it. As simple as that, especially if you're sick, you don't need to be doing the work. We have learning assessments. This is the first one is this week, is the individual learning plan, the ILP. This is where you're going to track your learning in the class. So something that we're going to talk a lot about in this class is what we call metacognition. Just a quick show of hands. Has anybody heard of metacognition before? Or has anybody not heard of it? I see a couple. Yeah, so it's thinking about thinking. So metacognition is this idea of how we process information and how we learn and how we understand, and we think about that, right? So we're going to think about, how do we study the best? How do we not study the best? What environment is best for our studying? How do I perform good if I take an exam? What did I do wrong? What did I do well? How do I do that? And so the learning assessments are allowing us to use this metacognitive strategy for you to evaluate your own work. So you're going to see, what have I done? What have I turned in? What have I learned? How am I meeting my goals? What skills am I learning? And you're going to do that several times throughout the semester. There will be several opportunities for extra credit. There's actually 2 of them available in the syllabus. I've already gotten a few people that have sent them to me, so read the syllabus carefully. It's in there. Some students have even pointed it out on perusal, so read what people are saying. I'm going to come back to how extra credit works because our grading policy is a little bit different, but there'll be some instances for extra credit. These are really good ways to pick up like exit tickets that you might not get because you didn't attend class. Also throughout the semester, we're going to have several working weeks is what I call them. You have a couple projects in this class, and the working weeks give you an opportunity to work on those projects. We're also going to come back. Our first one's in week 3. So next Thursday, a week from now, I'll talk a little bit more about how this relates to your time management goals and things like that. But we're going to kind of just not talk about course content, and we're just going to work towards things either in this class or not in this class. But we'll talk more about that next week as we approach the first working week. Can I contact this course for honors projects, etc.? Yes, if you have an honors project that you want to do, email me and we'll talk kind of personally about that. So if anybody's in honors and wants to do an honors project, just let me know. And then we'll have quizzes. So these are not every single week. These are every few weeks. There is, I think, 6 quizzes throughout the class. These will be done in class. So just like earlier, we were using Kahoot, we're going to do some Kahoot in-class quizzes. This allows us, so cognitive psychology shows us that the most immediate answer you can get is going to help you. Because what happens when you take an exam, how many of you have taken an exam and then you don't get to know whether the answers are right or wrong either ever or not until like a week later? Probably a few of you. Always. So according to cognitive psychology, that's actually not the best way to learn. It's because what happens is if you get an answer incorrect, if you're not immediately reinforced with what the correct answer is, you tend to persist in this idea of that incorrect answer. And so what we're kind of doing with this in class is we're going to go over the answers kind of immediately. If you miss a class, the quizzes are in the course calendar, so you know exactly when they're coming up. They're not pop quizzes. You'll see exactly kind of what week those are being offered. But if you need to miss class, I will do an online quiz as well. It'll be available in that week's module. It'll be different questions because since we're going over them in depth in class, we'll have kind of different questions for you. But they'll be available on Canvas as well, so you have them there. And then we have projects. So you have 2 main projects. You're going to have an article project where you're really going to look and compare a media article with actual science and cognitive psychology, and you're going to evaluate whether or not they captured it correctly or didn't. We're going to talk a lot more about these projects in week 3. So right now, don't necessarily worry about them. We're going to come back in week 3 and talk more about them. The next project is a study skills project. For all of you that said you wanted to increase your study skills, you're going to learn all about it, and then you're going to create whatever you want, essentially, to help other people learn about study skills. So you can create an infographic, a podcast, social media kind of series, whatever you want. Again, we'll talk more about this in week 3, but you'll kind of put together what are the best and what are the worst study skills. Spoiler, highlighting and rereading, 2 of the worst. Also 2 of the most commonly used ones. We'll talk more about that later. All right, grading policy. This is where it gets really different from maybe your normal class. So let's come back. Most of you were talking about stress, anxiety. Why do those words come up for you kind of first when talking about grading? So it feels permanent. A lot relies on having grades. You're bad at tests, test anxiety. So there's probably a lot. There's a lot wrapped up in grades. You've been kind of told from a very early time that grades are everything, right? You need a good GPA to get a job. Like you need to get into college, then you need the GPA, then you need to go and to get the job. And it's a lot of pressure, especially for those of you, a lot of you were saying that you wanted to go into graduate school. Seems like you need really good grades for that. So you're taught if you don't get grades, you won't succeed in life. This is a lot of pressure. Now, research on grades, and I'm going to spare you now. We'll probably talk about them throughout the semester because I have a lot of opinions on this since it's what I study. But research on motivation and research on reward systems and things like that. So behavior analysis, cognitive psychology, developmental psychology, all of those areas of research have different research programs that essentially show us that grades do not work in the way that we kind of expect them to nowadays. So grades were first instituted in higher ed, essentially just because they wanted to see how people were doing compared to each other. It was like one professor was just like, oh, I have all these students. I kind of want to see where they're at compared to each other. And then it just took off. And now we use them as a reward system for everything, but not just an award system. Like now it's kind of mandatory to have grades. But the research shows that grades actually inhibit intrinsic motivation. So intrinsic motivation is our internal motivation. So how many of you feel like you're just trying to get grades and not maybe necessarily learning the material? Or does anybody feel like that? I see one. So both, you want both sometimes, right? How many of you feel like in college, what you're trying to do is really understand what the professor is looking for rather than the concept of the material? Ooh, people are changing as you get older. I like that. So these are kind of effects of grades. Is what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the grade. I realized that in my classes, most of my students were emailing or communicating with me only about grades. Every email I got was about grades. How do I get this extra 5 points? How do I do this thing? And it really kind of drove me nuts because I wanted to talk about like the material. I want to talk about learning. I want to talk about the concepts. Again, I'm going to spare you. I'm going to kind of not go into my soapbox like I'm wanting to right now. But the research shows us in cognitive psychology that having these external rewards, so sticker charts, things like that, tend to not work. They decrease our intrinsic motivation, making us rely on, making us want to achieve kind of that carrot, that reward, more than what it's supposed to bring us. So the grade is supposed to help us want to learn more or learn better, but now we just want the grade rather than the learning. And so our intrinsic motivation. This is why you get those big words, stress, anxiety, pressure, because you're worried about that outcome more than kind of the concept of learning, things like that. Essentially, so what we're doing in this class is what we call alternative grading, where we're not doing grades. I know that your anxiety just spiked and your stress just spiked, but as the semester goes on, it'll get lower, I promise. Just ask previous students. What we're going to do, because students can't quite get rid of all grading, is we're going to do a 0-1 format. So you're going to get a 0 if you don't turn in an assignment. That's kind of obvious. You're also going to get a 0 if the assignment's not yet complete or not quite where expectations are. And in that case, you will get extensive feedback from both me and Jenna explaining how to improve it, and you always have the chance of resubmitting it. So you can evaluate, is this a project big enough? Do I need to resubmit it? Or is this like one exit ticket and I don't want to redo it and I'll just kind of let it go? And then you can resubmit it and you'll get a 1 whenever something is accepted. So when you meet expectations on that assignment, you have a 1, you know it's done, you can move on. There's also a rubric in the syllabus for what I constitute, because we do have to do grades throughout the semester because we are at a university that requires grades at the end of the semester. So the learning assessments that you're going to do periodically are times where we're going to check in. At the end of each learning assessment, you're going to give yourself a grade, and Jenna and I will come and give you feedback on whether or not we agree with you. Most students grade more harshly than I do all the time. You guys, I have students all the time that are like, well, I just didn't really like give my all on this. And I'm like, but it was acceptable, it was fine. So you'll give yourself a grade during these learning assessments, and I will come in and say, this is your grade. So several points throughout the semester, you will know exactly where your grade stands. And at any other point in the semester, if you're worried about it, come and talk to me. Come to those coffee hours, email me, come to my office. I will always let you know where I think you stand at any point in the semester so that you can feel a little bit less anxiety about where you stand for that grade. But on a day-to-day basis, we're not really worried about them. I'm not worried about 5% here, 2 points here, things like that. We're worried a little bit more about that actual learning process. So you get extensive feedback rather than just grades. I know a lot of you, probably all of you, have had points where you get a grade, but no feedback about how do I make this better or what am I doing correct. We do the opposite. We're going to give you feedback about what you are doing really well, what you can improve on, and we're going to worry a little bit less about those numbers. But you'll see in here kind of how many missing assignments you can have, the quality, all of that stuff is in this rubric. And again, if at any point you're concerned or worrying about it, come talk to me, come talk to Jenna. We'll get you, make sure you know you're on the right track. So that's grading. Again, the late policy, most stuff is due Sunday nights, but you have 24 hours with no penalty. After that, it'll be graded, I say, like 20% off, obviously, since we're not doing points. Essentially, that equates to you get like a 0.8. And that way, at the end of the semester, when we're looking at your overall system, we can see how many assignments you've been turning in late. Not a huge, big problem if a couple assignments are late, things like that. What? Sorry, the little guy needed a hug. You want to say hi? No? Okay. That's most of the policies. You'll come down here. You need a hug too. I wish I could. I have COVID though. I can't give you a hug yet. Okay. And then the course calendar, again, it's down here. It's also in the course modules. You'll have this all the time. What topics we're covering, what readings are due, and then what's due. So this week you have the first reading, which is the syllabus, and kind of intro into the books. They're really easy and fast. They're just the like introductions. And then that individual learning plan where you start to kind of map out your goals. All right, here's what we'll do. We'll bring my little kid in at least once during the semester and he can give you all hugs because he loves giving hugs. Or during this part of the semester when they have the puppies in the library, we'll just cancel class and we'll all go pet puppies. All right. So that is mostly the syllabus. At this point, what I'm going to do is go to this next question, which is just what other questions do you have? What do you want to know about before we end class today? And you can type them in here. You can type them in the chat. And you can ask me afterwards. You can email me, all that, anytime. We'll also repeatedly go over some of this stuff because, again, in cognitive psychology, what we learn, repetition. You're not going to remember things the first time around. So we'll go over these policies. We'll go over everything over and over and over again. That kind of stuff.
I just had a quick question.
Yeah,
I might have missed if you said this, sorry, I was doing Japanese homework, but I
That's
was
okay.
just wondering, are we gonna be doing like any research assignments or like anything related to like gathering research?
so the article assignment will be similar to that. So it's not your typical research assignment where you're gathering a bunch of research and then writing a report on it. But you will be finding research articles and things like that. During our week 3, where we're having that working week, we're actually going to go into the library and we're going to find those articles and start that search. So you'll have help with us kind of doing that. But that's most similar to a research assignment, but it's a little different than your typical research assignment.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. All right, I got 7 questions. Let's see if we can go through these. How many exams are there? I think I missed that. Oh, you did not miss that. There are 0 exams. You're welcome. I don't like exams. There's the quizzes. That's it. And then there's the readings, the learning assessments, the quizzes, the exit tickets, and those 2 bigger projects. And that's it. There's no exams in the class. Do we need to complete all 5 SMART goals in the ILP or list a certain number? No. So if you don't have all 5, this is a really great question. So in the ILP, the individual learning plan, there's a space for 5 goals. I want to see at least 1 or 2 in there. You don't have to fill out all 5. You can also use that and do personal goals that you have on your own without submitting them to me. But I want to see maybe 1 or 2. You don't have to do all 5. You also, I got questions earlier from another class. You don't have to submit for like every box. Like there's a box for like 6 obstacles that might come up. You don't have to have 6 obstacles. You just have to kind of start thinking about what might happen. I am a gift from the universe. Thank you. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, no exams. That's why people love my classes. Where is the ILP and how does it work? Yes, so it's on the course modules. Let me show you. It's going to be in week 1. It should be right here. There's this link where you can download it. I had to switch it to a Google Doc right now because the file wasn't working for some reason. So once you go into the Google Doc, you can just make a copy or download it and it'll be all right here. There's some questions in the beginning. And then here's the goals that we were just talking about right now and how to kind of go through those. And then once you're done, you just save it and upload it to the assignment. I can't submit here because I'm not a student, so it's not showing me the submit button, but it's right there. How many annotations are needed for perusal each week? This is another thing that students don't like when I say there's not a certain number. I've seen people do really, really well with 1 or 2 comments, and I've seen people need like 10 or so. So comments like, wow, that was really cool, or I agree with you, or I want to learn more about this. Those are excellent, and I want to encourage you because that's how you interact organically with other people. But those aren't really what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the more in-depth kind of conversations. So as long as you're having annotations that are sparking real curiosity, that are demonstrating that you're learning something, that you're connecting information to other things, that you're engaging with other students, there's not a set number. Again, go through this first week and just attempt it at your best at how you want to answer them. And then we'll give you feedback on whether or not you're doing well or need help. But essentially, as long as you engage, you'll be fine. You do need to have at least 1 annotation on each reading. So there's multiple readings per week. You need at least 1 on each to kind of get that full 1 point. So I guess there is a number, at least 1. But most people probably do about 3 to 5 for each reading. Will there be a paper essay in this class? That will be the article assignment. So the article assignment, you'll do a little write-up on that. That's pretty much your research paper, your essay assignment. The study skills assignment allows you to do a different modality. So it's similar to what you would do in a paper or essay, but rather than writing it out, you get to express your own creativity, because I research creativity and however you kind of want to do it. Some people do end up just writing it as a paper. Those will be the 2 projects. And then that's it for those questions. Any other questions or any clarifications? All right, so next week we should be back in person. If anything changes, I'll obviously send you an announcement, but at this moment we're going through as if it's going to be in person. We'll start with the content, we'll do all of that. And yeah, that should be about it. If you have any other questions, again, always let me know. I'll stay on for a few minutes until everybody leaves. So if you wanted to ask a question now, otherwise, I will see you next week and have a good weekend.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Thanks, you too.
I had a question.
Yeah.
So I want to do research. So one of my requirements in order to graduate is to like participate in some research.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if you do any research that could be used for that.
So I don't personally, because the makeup of my position here, I'm not allowed to take on students.
Okay.
Do you mind if I ask what type of research you might be interested in, and we can maybe narrow down who might be best?
I think right now I'm kind of debating between clinical or cognitive.
Okay. Do you have like specific topics that you're interested in, or just general?
Just general.
Okay. No worries. So
when I did a research class over the summer, my like project proposal was how weather impacts seasonal depression symptoms, which my professor said is more clinical, but I think I'm kind of more interested in cognitive.
Yeah, there's a lot of overlap, which is what makes it really hard. Let me share my screen with you really quick. I'm going to show you what to do. So if you go to our faculty, I just Google UNR Psych faculty and it comes right up, but it's on our page. You can narrow down by both clinical and cognitive. Now, in our department, so what's going to happen is don't let kind of our faculty limit what you ultimately want to do when you're going to graduate school, because our faculty are going to concentrate in very specific areas. So our cognitive department is very neuroscience heavy. We're pretty much a cognitive neuroscience, which is not how all cognitive programs work. I did cognitive development and we didn't do kind of any neuroscience. And so what our cognitive professors are going to offer might not be the exact cognitive type of area you're interested in, but that's fine. You can still work with our professors, get more in depth into their area, and then go on to graduate school to specialize in whatever else you're interested in. Again, we'll talk a lot about different areas in this class that aren't neuroscience as well. So you'll get a good idea of what else is out there. But you can narrow down by both and then just click on the professor and look at them and it'll tell you their research interests. And I would go through kind of each one and then pick out what sounds interesting to you, right? It doesn't have to be the ultimate question that you're excited about later on, but what sounds like something that maybe for a semester or for a year, you could go in and work on that question and kind of understand it. And at that point, when you find maybe 2 or 3 that you like, then you can just send them an email. Their email's always here, and ask about working in their lab. You know, you would say like, I saw that your research was on X and I really find that interesting. Could I talk to you to work in your lab? Something like that.
Okay.
So that's how you kind of find professors to work with. Another caveat is that labs fill up pretty fast. So they're usually looking for the next semester's research team before registration starts. So if you're interested in doing this for like next semester and spring semester, I would start this process right now. I would start looking at and I would start emailing professors, you know, in these next couple weeks And that way their lab is still usually open for that spring semester.
Okay.
Does that help? Do you have more questions? It's a lot.
No, I think that answered all of them. Thank you.
Yep. So that's kind of how you go through. If you have any other questions as you're going through, again, this is exactly what we talked about in advising. So just let me know.
Okay. Thank you.
Awesome. Have a good one.
You too.
Thanks.